Hey, folks, and welcome back to Let's Talk Mental Health. I'm Brian Wall, your host with over 2 decades of experience across 4 countries in the areas of mental health and addiction, with hopes of promoting awareness for listeners in a way that's not only challenges feelings of isolation caused by such issues, but also offers a supportive community where you can connect with others on the same journey to develop a healthier, happier you. Tune in weekly to learn more about these areas and how they impact your life. The Let's Talk Mental Health podcast is committed to sharing current trends in mental health and wellness by discussing the latest news, research, and insights in the field to expose our unhealthy patterns before they become a way of living, hopefully. For more information, be sure to follow us on all major social media platforms by searching 24/7 DCT and online at 247dct.org. This week's episode is yet another effort on our behalf to more closely track our tribe and bring awareness to issues like mental health, addiction, general wellness, and everything in between. So let's go ahead and get started by meeting this week's guest, Jeff Johnston, who is founder of the Living Undeterred Project and the Brighton app. After losing his oldest son, Seth, to fentanyl poisoning in 2016, and later his wife, Prudence, to alcoholism in 2021, Jeff has dedicated his life to making a difference in the mental health and substance abuse space. Aside from his podcast and radio show, Jeff also is launching the first ever one-page mental health plan app called Brighton, Brightn. You can leave the E out. We didn't need it. Created specifically for Gen Z. Welcome to the show, Jeff. How are you, brother?
Brian, man, I can't get rid of you. You're like a little pit bull hanging on my leg. It's like everywhere I go, there's Brian Wall. So, no, this is great. You were like one of the very first people I associated with this mental health journey. I kind of got thrown into by happenstance, I guess, not by design. I didn't set out to be a mental health advocate. And just as recent as 7 years ago, that was like not even on my top 20 things that interested me. Although ironically, as you'll find out, I had, but now I can see in hindsight, some mental health challenges that I was, typical male, naive, arrogant, narcissistic a little bit in regards to how I could handle this. So yeah, here we are. Now I'm on 24/7 DCT podcast. I want to give a shout out to Sal, Rocky, and Maki for welcome me into their home office there in near Chicago. I went in last week, had a great meeting with them. Super nice guys. They just rolled out the red carpet, and I don't have much to offer at this point. Our startup company, Brighton, full disclosure, you are actively involved in helping us with Brighton. You're on you're on my advisory board for good reason, Brian.
Thank you, brother.
But to meet the guys there and see what they're doing with telehealth and their emphasis with mental health, it was a great conversation that I had with some individuals that are, putting their money where their mouth is. They're looking at this more than, hey, this is a way to make money. Those three are as authentic, as genuine as, founders that you could meet. And I'm happy to support them. I'm real happy to find a way that Brighton and 24/7 DCT can align together and start to save lives, which is really what, at the end of the day, is really what we're trying to do: prevent deaths and save lives.
Yeah, I love that, man. Appreciate you include me in the project and allowing me to be on the advisory board, having a blast, learning a ton, and super excited about the launch of the app this summer. And I talked with Mackie and the crew and those guys. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm not just saying it, they're about as legit as they come. I've been doing this a long time. These guys are the real deal. They're looking to make real change, and just love that you guys were able to cross paths. And so wanted to start off our time together by sharing some Gen Z stuff, Gen Z facts with our listeners. I looked up a couple things to kind of bring folks on board, because the more and more I meet with you in this app, I'm learning even more and more about Gen Z and the need there. And so want to make sure our listeners are aware. Statistics on Gen Z show that 70% of them, this is approximately, the age range varied in different places I went, but approximately 11 to 26 years old, it looks like, is about the general range. About 70% of Gen Z feel their mental health needs the most attention and desire to focus on that daily. Additionally, 42% are diagnosed with a mental health disorder. According to Forbes, Gen Z's biggest concern is the reflecting and reevaluating, essentially what the future brings and how do I handle it stuff. As it relates to addiction, 42% are influenced or controlled daily by their social media interactions, and almost 25% of 12th graders have used illicit drugs or alcohol in the past 12 months. More alarming is the fact that those 12 to 20-year-olds are gravitating most often towards binge drinking patterns, which is even it's almost worse than regular consumption. So
Yeah.
with all that said, I want you to kind of briefly tell our listeners about the Living Undeterred project, the Brighton app, and what vision you have for being an impact on Gen Z, Jeff.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your advocacy and all you do. I think first thing I'll say is it's easy as an old person to look at the younger generations and always say we had it tougher. I mean, we walked 20 miles in the snow to go to school. I rode horseback to go to school. You at least wanted a car, Brian. I invented the fire. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers. We didn't have my typewriter. I used whiteout. It's like, so we can play that game forever. The reality is, yes, Generation Z is about 12 to 26. And yes, they have the most abundance of any generation of all time. No question about that. But I do want to compliment them. I want to compliment Gen Z on many areas of what they represent, because it's easy for us old people to take pot shots and say, oh, they're all depressed. They're all sad. They're all suicidal. They're all drunks. The reality is they're not. There is a percentage, and we'll talk about that. And those percentages aren't, massively out of whack to what previous generations have been, especially the millennials, the most recent generation, and Gen X as well. And now you even have the new generation, the Generation Alpha, which is the ones coming up behind. But I want to compliment Gen Z on a couple things. One, well, this isn't really anything to do with them, but they're huge. They're a third of the world's population.
Yeah.
They represent 1/3 of the world. You have to really think about that for a minute. 8 billion humans on this planet, and 1/3 of them fall in a range of 12 to 26. That's phenomenal. They are in America, it's 70 million Americans are Gen Z. So they're big. They're very influential. They're running into the next 2 years having more money, more disposable money than they've ever had. So they'll be able to buy the Starbucks and buy the designer purses and to, buy the nicer things in life. And what goes with that is the challenges that we talked about when we were designing the app, Brian, is that relationship with money is something that we'll talk about in a minute. But Gen Z is the first generation of all time. And when I first saw the statistic, I did my research on Gen Z when I was designing the app, as you well know. I wanted to become an expert in Gen Z. And one statistic that really jumped out at me was this next one, is Gen Z is the very first generation of all time to have their number one New Year's resolution be mental health.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So we have this tidal wave of the largest generation in human history coming at us. They're statistically the most depressed, the most anxious, the most lonely generation. You talked of something, and I thought of purpose and meaning when you talked about something you said a few minutes ago. So we know that they're a large generation. We know that they have all these challenges. And we'll talk about the causes in a minute, but we know the symptoms. Symptoms are sleeplessness, maybe putting, overweight, unhealthy eating, too much sugar, toxicity in relationships, and what you see on media, social media, especially. But, it's like the fact that they want help, I think we owe it to them, Brian. I think 24/7 DCT, Brighton, all the companies out there that really want to move the needle here and really make a difference. I think we need to build the systems and processes to invest and support that generation that is asking for help, and not just asking for help. They are actually getting help. 37% of Gen Zers reached out to get mental health treatment over 2021, 2022, 37% increase.
Wow. Yeah.
That's you start putting the math together. You're like, wow, this is a big generation. It's an important generation for the future of humanity. They're inheriting all this, and they're frustrated. That generation is very frustrated. They're mad at me. They're mad at you. They're mad at adults. They're mad at politicians. They're mad at, the waste that we seem to go through, and climate change, and the plastics in the oceans, and the damaging to the reefs and the environment and the air we breathe. And it's like, you wonder why they get up in the morning going, why the hell am I going to college?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I get it. I certainly get it. And so what we have to do as adults is we have to tell them, okay, yeah, you've got challenges. Let me tell you about some of the challenges I had.
Hmm.
They weren't as bad as yours and they weren't as good as yours. They were just different.
Right.
But if we can get kids to see hope and inspiration and see a world of love and abundance and not driven by fear and scarcity and anger and fighting and let's say for example, I'm an atheist and you're a Catholic. We should be able to have a good conversation, Brian.
Hmm.
Or if I'm Democrat and you wearing your MAGA hat and you're a big Trump supporter, why can't we have a good conversation? I mean,
Right.
that's what's fun. It's
Yeah.
exciting, but we can't do that today. Now it's like you're a MAGA guy, you're a jerk, you're an
Yeah.
idiot. You're
Right.
supporting LBGT rights. You're evil. You're the devil. It's like that's how we do things today. I'm trying to change that.
Yeah.
I just we're not going to get things fixed. We're not going to right this ship in any way, shape, or form with anger and hatred.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not going to happen. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And I think this generation, Gen Z, the largest, and then also the first to be so focused on mental health and addiction, self-care, wellness, etc. And so we've been preaching for decades now, wanting, oh, this is so important. This is so well, guess
Right.
what? We have a full generations that's meeting us. They're calling our bluff,
Right.
right? They're saying, okay, we're into it.
Yep.
So now it's time to answer the call. And I can't, like right now, I know it's going to get even more. I pray that it does, even more than it already is. But I think right now we're at a peak as far as bringing awareness in a lot of these areas that didn't exist before. And that's phenomenal. We're headed the right direction. And we have a generation at our fingertips that is standing with open arms saying, hey, I was born into a mess. I
Right.
didn't screw up all this stuff. I got born into it.
Right.
I want to make it better. How can you help me?
And I'm
Right.
happy you said that because that word better resonates with me because the better, not bitter mindset that we talk
Yes.
about living undeterred, the victor, not victim mentality. And you're right. You wake up in the morning and you say, I didn't create this mess. I was born this color. I was born this economic situation. I was born in this
Yeah.
part of the world. So what? I mean, really, so what? I mean, that's a victim mindset. Whatever position you want to, and you may be right. And I'm not going to say you're born in Sudan, in a tent, I'm not going to say, well, too bad, but the reality is there's nothing you can do about that, but you can do a lot about what happens next. You can't change your color. Unfortunately, we won't go down this road, but apparently you can change your sex.
Right.
But the reality is, you can't do a whole lot with what you were born with. And so lean into it, learn from it, become an advocate, fight for your right. But look at all the things that happen in your life. And me, I use this phrase all the time when I talk to kids and even adults. Do things happen to you or do things happen for you?
Yeah.
That's the single best question you can ask yourself. So
Love it.
you lose your job. Are you a victim or are you a victor?
Yeah.
You apply to get something and they pick somebody else. Are you a victim or a victor? You get in a car accident, your car gets damaged. Maybe you break your leg. Somehow you're going to find a way. You're going to have to be a victor out of it. You don't want to being a victim sucks. Being depressed sucks. Being sad sucks. So let's try to lessen the amount of time we spend in those areas. And even if depression's a disease, so what? I mean, so what? What is that?
Yeah.
What is that? If I tell you depression is a disease, that's probably just going to give you a sense of, well, okay, at least it's not my fault. At least I have nothing. I can't control it because it's a disease. It's almost an enabling way to look at it. Instead of saying to yourself, okay, alcoholism's a disease. I get it. My dad was an alcoholic. My grandma, my mom, they weren't, by the way, but let's just say I'm thinking that way. So what? Well, why do I have to drink just because my grandfather did? I don't. I mean, I heard someone say one time about alcoholism being a disease, and they said, "Well, you're predisposed to drink alcohol." Fine,
right?
You know more about this than I do, Brian. That could be a true statement. At some point, though, my hand will pour that alcohol in my mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't care what somebody says, disease or not. I will always have a moment up until that alcohol hits my lips. I'll have a choice. I could buy the beer at the store. That was a choice. Pour one. I could put it in my fridge. That's another choice. I could open it, not drink it. That's another choice. I could open it, dump it down the sink. So there's a series of choices you can make as someone struggling with these things. And even if I have a beer, fine. You don't have to have two. I mean,
Right.
you can always find something on that spectrum where you could say, okay, boom, disease or not, I choose not to do this.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to get people that are victims to start thinking like a victor,
Mm-hmm.
and more on the better road versus the bitter road. And it really starts with that mindset as a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
the most successful people that I know had some type of a mindset when they were younger. And young men today are really struggling. They're growing up in broken families.
Yeah.
I thought I saw a statistic, more young men grow up in a dysfunctional family than they grow up in a good family.
A healthy family. Yeah.
Right. Healthy. There
Yeah.
you go.
I've heard the same thing.
Yeah. And so, I'm not saying men are the backbone of our country. I mean, obviously, we need both strong men and women, but I think for young men today, you wonder why, most, shooters and stuff tend to be, white men, young men, 16, 17, 18, 19. At some point when you have 100 shootings and 95 are like the same profile, then we got to start trying to look at why is this happening?
Yeah, that means
I'm not blaming white people. I'm not blaming anybody.
Right.
And that's the problem with this culture today. Let's say the statistic was the same thing and it was 90% of school shooters are African American. Okay, well, there's something going on. I'm not blaming black people. It's like, and we can't bring up these conversations today without somebody saying, "Oh, you're a homophobe. Oh, you're a racist." It's like, no, I'm okay. I'm
solution focused.
Let's just try to stop people from shooting each other. I don't give a crap what color they are. It's like, it's like, God, can we get past this and start solving problems instead of passing blame all the time?
Yeah.
That's right. I get really frustrated with that. I really do. And I get frustrated with it on all aspects. Going back to why young people are frustrated, Brian, is they see parents arguing on these things all the time.
Yeah.
They're not solution based.
Mm-hmm.
They're blame based.
Yeah.
They're blame based.
Mm-hmm.
You did that. The reason why this is happening is because of this.
Yeah.
It's just not that simple.
It's not that simple. Very fault finding, fault finding model. And I think that's probably why you and I connect so well and have since the beginning, because we have the same heart on this topic, just super passionate about doing better, finding a solution. I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't care what your color is or where you came from, or
I
can't tell you how often I say it every day with clients. First of all, I ask them, do you have a dog in that fight? Now, my clients know what that means. Is this something you really should be putting energy into? If it is, okay, fine. What are you going to do next? What's your next move? I can't tell you how often I say that, because we can talk all day about how this is affecting you and how horrible it is, et cetera. And I think there's value in that too. But at some point, you got to get past that and say, okay, so what is the plan? How are we going to move forward? And that's kind of what happened with you on the Living Undeterred project tour last summer. I want you to share some of what you heard out there with our listeners. What were people saying? What were you finding that led to you launching this Brighten the App idea?
Yeah, it was crazy because, when our son overdosed, he was poisoned by fentanyl at the age of 23. Seth was in 2016. And that really was the end of a 6-year horrific journey that he had when he was first given Adderall for attention deficit, which don't get me going on that. You notice I didn't use the word disorder.
Right.
We need to take
I love that about you.
We need to take that word out of all these labels and these diagnoses we give. We just need to stop at the word and not add disorder. Even if it is, we just need to take it out of our verbiage, because when kids hear it, that's what concerns me. I don't care if you and I call it a disorder. We can argue all day long whether attention deficit's a disorder. Yeah. I don't care. I don't care if there's kids around us hearing that, because then they're 13 are going to think they have a disorder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sticks with them for the rest of their life. So, so I got a little frustrated. I wrote a book, doing this podcast for 3 years. COVID was there. It was hard to get out. I just kind of felt like, okay, what's next on my plate? I've done lots of advocacy things. And so I thought, well, I could do more behind my computer, but I just feel like my real value to society is this, healthy conversations with adults and trying to give people better ways to look at life. And so I had this idea to get an RV. drive around the United States for 95 days, which, you came to a couple of our stops,
Mm-hmm.
which I really appreciate your support.
Yeah,
but the funny thing is, it started off kind of as let me tell people my story. Let me kind of make this a little bit about me
mm-hmm.
in a narcissistic way. And, wow, if I go out there and tell my story, all these people are going to just flood me with love. And that's great. But, I don't need all that love. I need to kind of share that with people.
Right.
I mean, once I get my energy tank filled up, I can't put any more. I don't have a reserve tank. I
Mm-hmm.
just fill up my energy and then I deplete it and then I fill it back up. I don't have a place to store excess love and energy and all that.
Right.
So the purpose of the tour was to go out there and really, after about my first stop, Brian, I realized I don't want to talk about me the whole time. I just don't. I want to talk about Brian. I want to talk about someone else at a workshop or presentation,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, and turn that vulnerability superpower idea really into legitimately a superpower. And I did that by slowly dripping in my story. So my 45-minute presentation, I don't even talk about Seth dying till like the first 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intentional in that because I don't want to just come out and just say, oh, our son died.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I don't need to grab people's attention like that. That's almost
Right.
too gimmicky. But anyway, so, getting back to the tour. So we went around the United States, met a lot of people, a lot of great advocates, some people that are on the board
Mm-hmm.
with you. And then got back and again, just felt restless, like what's next. And so this app thing has always been in the back of my head. It's like the number one thing that stresses kids is their phones. And we just keep building more and more things that stress them more and more, social media things. And I kind of had this idea, well, let's do an app, but let's don't make it where it's stressful for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what causes the stress? Well, the one thing that you would think investors are most interested in, and that's social communication. That's kids being able to connect other kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful thing on most apps. For Brighton, I just didn't think our first version was somewhere. That's not where we wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So Brighton is like a safe place for kids to go to build a mental health portfolio on their own with some guidance. We have Chat GPT, we have artificial intelligence, we have everything built into the app. But the one thing we don't have now, and it's by intention, is the ability for me to like reach out to Brian and how are you doing today and stuff. I mean, there's so many other ways they can do that. We want to keep Brighton kind of in your mind only, but
Mm-hmm.
allow people to put success stories on Brighton so they can go in the app and they can put a picture of themselves with a paragraph of how the app helped them get through whatever. And then kids could see other kids using the app and get that peer-to-peer
Yeah.
social
Very
proof
powerful.
element that works good. But maybe the version 2, version 3, we raise, millions of dollars. Maybe we'll build a chat room or something. But, right now, I think that's the root of a lot of the problems that kids have.
Yeah.
So, if that strategy is going to work, I don't know. We may launch, and some investors would say, well, the fact you can't communicate, I'm not interested. If we hear that a lot, then we'll figure out a way to make it work. But
Mm-hmm.
the app in our mind is a way for kids to work on 3 optimal areas of mental wellness. And I spent a long time thinking what these 3 are. And one popped into my head immediately, and that was health. Every app talks about health, right? Healthy choices, whether it's when you go to bed at night, when you get up, what you eat, what you drink, if you work out, do you meditate, do you watch toxic things on TV? All these things that most apps that geared towards mental wellness have some element of meditation, yoga, things like that. So what are the other 2 areas, Brian? What are 2 really different areas? But when you add them all up, it represents optimal mental health. Well, the second one that really came to mind to me was purpose, meaning and purpose. Initially,
Mm-hmm.
I had this called existentialism initially, but that was too strong a word. Even adults don't know what that means. So I went with purpose. And so what do I mean by that? It's just what we talked about. Kids they don't have any purpose today. Why am I going to college? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? When, the world is not going to be here in 20 years because the adults have ruined it,
Mm-hmm.
Um, or why would I get interested in politics when all I hear is people fighting and yelling and screaming? We want young people involved in politics. That's our future. Our next president down the road is 10 years old right now somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
So, we need to figure out a way to get younger people involved in politics. I mean, we shouldn't have presidents in their 80s,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't want to be, I'm 57, dude. I have a hard time remembering things and getting up in the morning. And
Right.
I
I
mean,
can't imagine
80,
doing it.
80, give me a break. I mean,
Yeah.
and I admire, I don't want to take 80-year-olds and put them in jails or anything, but it's like,
Yeah.
maybe that's not maybe our candidate pool has to have more people that are a little bit closer to the pulse of what's going on, a little bit more reality, but nonetheless. And so that was meaning and purpose. So that was a big part of the app. And then the third one I really struggled with. What's that third thing that people don't really talk about? And then, man, it kind of fell in my lap. I started looking at the data, and the number one stressor for old Gen Z, 18 to 25, the most financially illiterate generation of all time,
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z. Money kept coming back. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a 33-year financial advisor. That's what I did for my whole life, was invest money and talk about money. And now that I quit that and retired and sold my company, I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity here to have this app heavily emphasizing wealth. And I picked wealth over money and finances and things like that, because wealth isn't money.
Yeah.
You can have a wealth of time, a wealth of healthy relationships, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of health. I mean, but in this case, specifically in the app, wealth for us is having a healthy relationship with money. So it's not really about money, like how to make it or what type of car to get or flashing wads of hundreds like, they do on TikTok and stuff. Because that's an unhealthy relationship with money.
Right.
And so how do we teach kids that are 12 and 15 and 17 of having a healthy relationship? And that's what we set out. That's what Brighton's going to do. And again, I've been honored to have you on our board. You were there from the get-go in our first few meetings, and it's come a long ways. We launch in July. So for anybody listening that would want to hear more about it, we have a landing page. It's just brightenyourlife.com. Very simple. BRIGHTN yourlife.com. That's our landing page. So yeah, we're excited. And I'm not going to stop from there. I got to keep thinking of bigger things, that we can leverage up. So if Brighton does well, Brighton is a for-profit company. It's the first time in all my advocacy, I've never made any money. I've put in exponentially, for every $10,000 I spend on advocacy, I make probably $5.
Yeah.
I swear to God, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, my cash burn in 5 years has been a lot of my retirement money that I've been spending. But at some point, I can't do that forever without a massive amount of help. Like people writing me checks for my nonprofit, then we can continue. But that's not happening. People aren't giving money. So I have to invent something that has the ability to use capitalism to help kids. Well, to help kids. The app's free. We're not gonna nickel dime kids. So the app's free. We have a free version of the app. And then anything that comes from Brighton down the road, if I sell it, I'm taking that money and I'm going to leverage up. I'm going to build a bigger app. We're going to have teen centers. I mean, I've got all these really cool ideas that we can do that obviously money really helps. So the purpose of the Brighton app being a for-profit is nothing to do with enriching myself. That's not, never was anything that I wanted to do. And quite honestly, I'm in a position where I probably could kind of settle back and retire and not take these risks. But I think if I were to die today and look back on my life, I would feel like I wasted a great opportunity to help people.
Yeah, man, you've always been an inspiration to me. I appreciate you. I love you like a brother. I'm so excited about the Brighton app. Always been inspired by the Living Undeterred project. I think about it often. I think about all that you've been through, and we touched on it here and there. And the fact that you've been able to live successfully in recovery and do it so well has always been an encouragement to you. And I've spoke openly with you about my issues, my struggles. I consider you part of family, and I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for doing all that you're doing. Thank you for having the courage to launch this app. Folks, this is next level. I've seen it. it's going to change lives on a massive level. I really believe that. I think this is going to be the next big thing. And anybody that wants to donate or support, what better way to do it? I wish an app was like this was available when I was in that 18 to 24 year range, because that's when all my problems happened.
Me too.
And so we're going to make sure listeners are aware of all your handles, all the information. We know on Instagram he's got at Living Undeterred, at Brighten Your Life, brightenyourlife.com, livingundeterred.org. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Jeffrey Johnston. Feel free to look him up, folks. We're certainly going to be, you're always going to be in my family. I'm going to be with DCT for some time to come, I'm sure. And so love to have you back on the show at some point. I know that we'll probably be partnering with you and the Brighten app at some point, and I'm not sure how that looks yet, but I know the leadership is gung-ho about it. So thanks again for joining me, brother. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. And again, thanks for all you do. And it's a tough, I'm not going to call it a grind, because we choose to be in this lifestyle. I mean, we choose to be advocates. In a way, I guess I had somebody once say to me, Jeff, you didn't choose to be an advocate. Advocacy chose you.
Yeah.
And, now when I think about that, that is true. I mean, death came into my life as an opportunity to become a better person. All the things that have kind of happened in my life, I've been kind of chosen. I don't mean that in a special way, but I mean, just by circumstance and by happenstance and by what's happened, by whatever, here I am, now I'm a full time. And so I'm really embracing it, but I'm excited for the future. I really am optimistic. I think there's a lot more good things on the table than there are bad, but the bad are bad. I mean, social media is going to be something that we're really going to have to figure out what we want as a society. Do we want to just, support young people to build apps to make $1 billion for themselves and then leave a trail of wreckage of young adults that are struggling with all aspects of the negative aspects of social media? And I guess that's one problem with capitalism is it rewards the people that builds the apps, but it doesn't really do anything with the people that are using them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you're killing it. You're hitting it on all the right points. You really are. And this is that momentum, that energy that you want to have in your life. You want to build on outside your life. It all comes back to you. Jeff and I both are big believers in the energy that we spend on things, the energy we put out, the energy we allow to influence us. And so Brighten is one of those positive points in life. It's one of the lights, one of the lighthouses in the community. And so really pumped to be a part of it. Again, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you and 24 DCT were able to cross paths. I think that's going to be a promising partnership. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going to go.
Love you like a brother, man.
Thanks, man. If you're interested in engaging with a therapist, you can find more information online at 247dct.org. So don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to join you today in sorting out all those hopeless things you got going on in your life and get you back on track. That brings us to Real Talk with Brian, and this week's encouragement is brought to you by Rumi, who said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself." Mm-hmm. This was in the 13th century, folks. So wildly enough, couldn't be more true today. If we focus on keeping our corner clean, so to speak, by taking care of ourselves first, we'll inevitably find that balance we seek and the quality of life that we all so much desire. So it's not rocket science, but it does require some discipline and consistency to do so. That's why it's so important to have supports in place like 24/7 DCT and the Brighten app. I encourage you all to check them out both online this week. Be sure to follow my weekly trilogy series on LinkedIn at #BeRealWithBrian to gain insight in the areas of mental health, addiction, and general wellness. I appreciate everyone that joined us today. If you're interested in gaining practical advice and expert insights for living your best life, join us weekly on Let's Talk Mental Health for support to connect with others that genuinely understand what you're going through. Again, you can check us out on all major media platforms by searching 24/7 DCT and online at 247dct.org. We look forward to spending time with you next week as we welcome yet another guest who's committed to getting you feeling better.